on Q. Every other Wednesday night, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Only on Q95, the big station.
Jacob is calling his children. Right, so we walk. Oh, children, home. Oh, to Zion's home.
For decades in search of economic opportunities and educational advancement. Many are ready to give back to their cherished nature island. Welcome to Roots Connections on Q. Join Dr. Simone Mathieu on Q95 as we tap into the life and times and expertise of our nature island Dominicans, at home and abroad. From our agriculture and industry to sustainable development, resilience and renewable energy, to the music, art, and entertainment industries. Join Dr. Simone Mathieu and guests every other Wednesday from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. We examine where they came from, where they have been, where they are now, and how we can move forward together with our brothers and sisters at home and abroad to inspire and elevate our country, our economy, our people, and our youth to achieve excellence and success. Roots Connections on Q, every other Wednesday night, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Only on Q95, the big station.
Jacob is calling his children.
Good evening, Dominica, the Caribbean region, and the rest of the world. And welcome to another episode of Roots Connections on Q, right here on Q95, the big station. Wherever you are, whatever you might be doing at this time, it is wonderful to be in your company for another episode of Roots Connections on Q, where we navigate a world where change is the only constant. So here on Roots Connections, we feature the change makers in our community, the visionaries among us who are not sitting by the sideline, are waiting for change, but they're on the front line, walking the talk and showing us what happens when we turn our passion for Dominica into action for the sustainable development of our country, our people, and our region. We continue to witness how quickly the world around us is changing. So here on Roots Connections, we are committed to engaging with our visionaries as we explore topics such as the changes we should be concerned about, the changes we should be taking advantage of, and what changes we need to make in order to move our Caribbean region and our people forward. So welcome. This is episode number 114, and I am your host, Dr. Simone Mathieu. As always, we have another packed program for you as we continue to focus on opportunities to positively impact our Caribbean region and our worldwide diaspora, especially as it relates to sustainable economic development. So we have another packed program for you. And before we get started this evening, we always like to say a prayer for our country, Dominica, especially when we're seeing so many young people losing hope. We pray for the family. We send condolences to the family of that young man who unfortunately took his life at only 35 years old. So we have to figure out what is going on with our young people and what can be done to provide them with hope and to provide them with opportunities for a better life. So we have two wonderful women with us this evening, and we're going to be looking at the importance of town and country planning for sustainable development of Dominica. And we have two women who need no introductions. We have Miss Annie Edwards, physical planner and environmental strategist. And we also have, for the very first time joining us on Roots Connections, Ms. Juliette Shillingford, who is an urban planner. So you can already tell we're going to have another Power Packed program for you. If you're joining us on Facebook, Greg Baptist, always great to see you. Thank you for being here. You can join us on Facebook and YouTube at Q95 FM Radio and Push Past 10. Don't forget to click the notification button and to share the live so that everyone can join us for this conversation. Lambi, it is always great to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the console as you'll take the calls later in the program. Showing Norris, Mr. G, the rest of the Q95 family. Thank you for all that you do to keep us connected to Dominica. So let's go ahead and give a warm Roots Connections welcome to our guests as we ask them to unmute their mics and thank them for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us here tonight. So please unmute your mic and just greet the audience. Let them know you're here and what you're hoping to touch on this evening. So Annie, let's begin with you.
Okay, good night to Simone, and thank you for inviting me to the show. And good night to your audience all over the world. I'm Annie Edwards. I'm a physical planner and also environmental specialist and activist. And a lot of people know me better for my activism in the field of environment. Tonight, we're going to demystify physical planning, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people think of physical planning or physical planners as these policemen who are there to, tell you how to use your land. But we'll demystify that, explain to you what physical planning is all about and how we in Dominica can position ourselves for a more sustainable form of development using physical planning as a tool. So I'll just stop here and let Juliette go on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here, Annie. Juliette, tell us a little bit, greet the audience and let us know what you're planning on touching on this evening.
Well, I'm just here to join Annie to explain and, as she said, demystify the whole concept of planning, and just to emphasize the importance of it in developing Dominica.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
My
fantastic. And say it again.
I said my name is Juliette Shillingford. I am an urban planner by training and by experience. And I've always had a passion for the city. I am currently the UWP candidate for the Roseau Central constituency. And I'm happy to be here. So good evening to everyone out there listening to us. And I think it's going to be a very, hopefully an engaging conversation this evening.
Oh, absolutely. It always is. And while we have you on the mic, let's just go ahead. This being Roots Connections, tell us about your connections to Dominica, a little bit about your upbringing and your professional background. Juliette, you can go.
Oh, you want me to go? Okay.
Yes.
I'm born in Dominica. I'm from Roseau Central. I grew up for the most part here. Well, my teenage life was spent outside of Dominica. We left Dominica when I was 10 years old, and we went to live in Africa. And then I moved to Canada to pursue my education. And I moved back to Dominica when I was 23, and I've been here ever since. I worked in the public service, in the public sector as a physical planner, as a chief physical planner for, I think, a total of about 13 years. But I continue to play a role in that area right up until Tropical Storm Erica, in that field, I should say. So, my bulk of my career has been in the public service and in physical planning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that, Annie. A little bit about your background, your upbringing in Dominica.
Annie Edwards, as I said, I was born in Marigot, born and bred in Marigot. When I passed the then common entrance examination, I came to town to go to secondary school because that's where there were no secondary schools in the countryside at that time. From there, after graduating from the sixth form college, I went back to Marigot, taught at the St. Andrew's High School for about 3 years. And then I got employment at the physical planning division. That was since in the early 80s. Went on to study physical planning and worked at the planning department for a number of years. I would say up to just over 30 years. So I started off as planning assistant, went on to become physical planner, and then chief physical planner for a period of 3 years. I also um, I'm qualified as a physical planner and also have a master's degree in natural resource and environmental management. So after completing my studies in 2009, I and that's the time that I became chief physical planner afterwards, and I really used my knowledge that I had got through the master's degree to kind of influence planning. In the past, I would say planning was more like in a vacuum. As a physical planner, you think of the site, you go check the site, and you check whether the development is compatible with it and that sort of thing. But having studied environmental management, I realized that we could not just think of the site. We need to come up with plans that look at the entire island. So I was very instrumental in getting funding through the CDB to do a national land use policy that was completed in 2015, and national physical development plan, which is still in draft form. So these are plans that are sitting in the planning department. But what, as I said, the studies that the master's degree really opened my mind about about planning for sustainable development. Before around that time that I did the studies, that's when the whole concept of climate change was really becoming more known, more popular, and I was able to really benefit from that time and use my knowledge to influence some of the work at the planning department.
So it's safe to say that both of you were chief physical planner?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Juliette
that
was before me.
excellent. So we
Yes,
have the right
yes,
guest for this
Annie.
program. We have the right guest. So I like how you started by saying demystify physical planning, because I think that is an important place to start. And we're just going to open up the conversation one time. So both of you feel free to jump in as you feel, as you see necessary. Demystify physical planning. So let's talk about that. Let's demystify physical planning for everyone who's listening to us this evening.
I start, or Juliette, you want to
Yeah,
start?
go ahead, Annie.
Well, what I mean by demystifying planning is that people planning is not a very popular term, or is not an area that a lot of people study. And people think of planning just as the planning department. You submit, if you're going to bail, you submit your plans to the planning department, and officers come, they check your site, and then when you start to bail, they're on your backs, and they think, if I could just get out of this whole phase of this whole part of my life, it would be so much easier, because I would just get my money from the bank and start to build. But planning is much more than that. In fact, if you look at the Physical Planning Act of 2005, it's
2002.
2002, sorry. It's the larger part of that bill deals with developing national plans, physical development plan, land use plans, and it's just a small section that really deals with what you call development control, which is you want to build your house and you submit your plans to planning and so forth. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today more or less hinges on that aspect of it, the development of land use plans and how you can use land use planning to or physical planning or urban planning to guide development. So Judith can take over from that, explaining to them. Yes.
Well,
Demystifying it.
The,
So
the,
it's so the layman can understand. And Margot Lara, great to see you. Guys, if you're on the Facebook Live, Mr. George, Mr. Nicholas George is with us. Great to see you, sir. If you're on the live and you want to be acknowledged for being here, simply just tell us where you're joining us from or say good evening, and I'll be happy to acknowledge that you're here on the Facebook Live. And by the way, good evening to our listeners on Q95 as well. I forgot to acknowledge you. So thank you for being here. We know that you're loyal listeners to the program. So thank you for being here. Julia?
Hi. So the Annie mentioned the Physical Planning Act of 2002. So yes, one section of it is about preparing the responsibility to prepare development plans for the island. The other section is about development control, like how to manage development on the island. But the other section that she didn't mention was the responsibility to protect the environment.
I was thinking about that.
There's a whole section on that, and that's where you have laws specific to environment protection. You have plant preservation orders, you have amenity orders that you can exercise in an urban area. You can have historic preservation, you have controlling the access to beaches, things like the fact that you must have maintain a public right of way to every beach in Dominica. So there's that other section of the act that oftentimes we don't exercise, because as Annie says, that we focus much more on managing the development of land, and to a great extent the act is underutilized. It doesn't we're not using the full potential of the act in doing our work as it is right now. So there's a lot of scope to improve planning and the function of planning in Dominica.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, because how much of the Physical Planning Act of 2002 has been put into play? How much of it is being followed, is being implemented, or certain aspects of it being implemented to the detriment of other aspects? So if you had to evaluate how much of that plan from 2002, which was quite a few years ago, what would you say? Is it being followed to the letter?
Well, I think there's room for institutional strengthening. I think there's like it's not. There's a lot more that we can do, and the physical planning division is not a strong arm. There's a lot that could be done to strengthen its operations. That is not, like, for instance, last I checked, there were about 5 development control officers that are responsible for monitoring the entire island. Just 5 people, and their work is how often they go out is controlled by the amount of miles they can earn. Correct me if I'm wrong, Annie. That's probably still happening in planning.
Explain that. How many
And
miles?
it was cut in half.
Explain that about the miles.
There's X amount of miles that they can claim a month, right, Annie?
Yes.
Because I
In
left
terms of driving?
Because in the past it was 500 and it has now been reduced to 250. I don't know if they increased it.
There you go. So that's a problem. That's a problem. How well can they do their work if they're restricted by the number of miles they can claim to go out there in their own vehicles? And there's only 5 of them for the entire island. Wow. So there's ways that we can. There's always to strengthen the institution.
Yes, go ahead, Annie.
Juliette did not include the most important one: political interference.
Oh yes, of course. That does affect the functionality of the department. I mean, when I was there, I didn't really have a problem. Perhaps it's gotten worse. In my day, I felt like when I studied, there was a subject I never forget. It was about politics and planning policy. So we were basically taught how to manage in that situation. So I felt very comfortable working with the politicians in my day, and things may have gotten worse now. But apparently there's a lot more political interference now than it was before. So again, there's room for improvement.
Go ahead, Annie.
Yes. So we, for instance, with the airport project, more major government projects, the Daywash project, and also projects like the marina and so forth, we are being told, we are understanding that these projects don't have planning approval, and these are major projects that should be, be under the watch of the planning department. So what is happening is that either plans are being submitted, they are just being submitted for the just for to say that they
Paperwork.
going through the full process where sometimes they are sent back for additional information, that sort of thing, and they are just not sent back. They are not returned to the department. That is a case of political interference, because if the developers were made to understand that they must abide by the planning laws, they would not be operating that way. So it's because they feel that they have this authority.
Yeah, and
Of
I can
the,
tell, our audience is going to be very instrumental in this conversation because I'm already seeing some great questions coming in. Margot, thank you already. We have to talk about violations because are they policing themselves? And we also have to look at the political interference because it is the reality. And I'm happy we're starting on demystifying what is planning, because I clearly recall the young man who's in charge of the airport development, the CEO, Samuel Johnson. He said on Q95 that the government is planning and planning is the government. So explain that for us. Is the government planning and is planning the government? Because I think we were all stumped when he said that, because then in essence, why would we need a planning department if it is just the government? So explain that for us. Was he correct?
I wouldn't say so, because the Physical Planning Act refers to the Physical Planning Authority as the governing body, right? But that authority is actually the Development and Planning Corporation that has its own law. So it's like a statutory body similar to DOASCO, right? So in truth and in fact, there's a board that is appointed, and that board oversees the work of the Physical Planning Division. The government, the policy direction that we take, the government gives us subvention, or the government can give us a complete staff, can staff the department, which they have done. The Physical Planning Division it is public servants that are actually working there. But the way the act is written, that's an option. That is not a guarantee. For instance, government could just give a complete subvention and allow the whole Physical Planning Authority to operate quite independent of the public service. So it's not really operating in the way that it should. Like, for instance, I mean, so above the chief physical planner, the chief physical planner is also the secretary manager of that entity. You understand? And that entity has its own chairman and everything else. I tell you, it's similar to the WASCO in that sense. And that's how it's operating right now. I think the PS has a lot more involvement in the operations, and that ought to be limited. That's my view, and based on my knowledge of the act.
Annie? Yes, thank you, Juliette. Annie, you wanted to add anything?
That's basically, no, not really.
Yes. So what I want us to do, because I want us to have a very balanced conversation, which is always one of my goals here on Roots Connections. So let's talk about anything good that planning has done, is doing. So let's look at the positive. What are some of the areas in Dominica we could look at and say, okay, this was a good effort by planning. The correct protocols were followed in regards to this particular project, this particular initiative. So do we have any thoughts on that?
I would say what I could do is maybe point out an area in Dominica where the planning can be which can be used to explain planning. And I always think of the goodwill scheme that occurred before my time, maybe in the 40s or 50s or maybe 60s. But it was a situation where an goodwill estate was acquired, and I think it's the British government or UNDP or one of those agencies that came in and did the development. So if you look at Goodwill properly, you'll notice that starting from the coast, you have the lowest Pottersville Goodwill section, low income kind of. Then as you go up the area, you get into more middle income, and then you get higher up above the airport into like a bit of higher income. So it has different levels of income. It has different uses. So there is the when it was initially done, there was the fully functioning Goodwill primary school. We know about the hospital was eventually placed there. There's a playing field, and there are churches and a lot of commercial areas, zones in between. So you could look, if you want to understand how proper planning takes place, you can look at a Goodwill scheme. There were also another great thing about it. There were regulations for the scheme, and these regulations were actually passed in Parliament by cabinet. So it's a well-established thing. But what has been happening right now in modern times, I would say, people have kind of moved away from the size, in terms of the size of buildings that can be accommodated on the lots. So you go through this scheme and you see a lot of 2 and 3 story buildings now. That has just raised the density of the area. But you could also say that it's a necessity, because there's more demand for land in the area. People can walk to Roseau if they work in town. So there's a greater demand for housing in that area. And it was in that vein that with that in mind, planning really started to give people permission to do higher density buildings. So you have 3 story buildings, mainly apartment buildings. So I would look at it as one of the major developments. The Canefield area was also developed along those lines. So there is the older Canefield section, which also has small lots, and on the lower section, as you go upwards, you get into higher, bigger lots. There's a commercial section on the around the Canefield Airstrip area. That area was more commercial. You had at one point when it was done, there was supposed to be a playing field, a stadium, in fact, but that was eventually changed. There's industrial section. So just that whole Canefield area, the land was acquired, the estate was acquired, and government moved in and did that development. So those are I think among the better developments. You have others like mm, where I live, Castle Comfort. There's also Warhouse, but these are more just residential schemes. You don't find any commercial activity. You hardly find a recreational area space for it. So, what is true? Planning really is about making the best use of the land, the best land use decisions. You have that area of land, you look at where which section of the land is most suitable for residential use, where you should put your commercial areas, where you should put your industrial areas. So it's really, that's what it's all about, making the best use of the land so that it's economically, socially, and environmentally viable to the people who live there.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. And Juliette, if you want, you can jump in too. Why is this important? Why is physical planning? What are the implications of good physical planning on Dominica? So why is this important?
So planning basically allows for the orderly and progressive development of land, and in a sustainable way, in a way that whatever you're doing is not going to negatively affect future generations. It's as simple as that. Yeah, that's the way to go about it. Always consider what has happened in the past, and make sure whatever you're doing now is not going to negatively affect future generations. So when we review an application, for instance, we will consider, let's say we're doing a subdivision by a river, we will look at at where did that river flow before? Like, is it the current channel? Is this the channel where it has always been? So we will ask for setbacks from the river that will allow for that sort of movement of the river. That's just an example. Another thing that planning is important. We always first think of the community before the person. So we want to make sure that whatever you're proposing to do is not going to negatively affect your neighbor, is not going to negatively affect the community, it's not going to negatively affect the environment. So we look at the individual need is last, you know, it's literally last. We have to make sure that everything is okay, and then we'll come to make sure that you're doing it good for yourself. Um, and that's it. And when it comes to you, things that we consider in an application, for instance, Annie and I were talking about that last night. One of the things we would look at, for instance, is ventilation. And you're going to put a bedroom, a house, a residential house, and we look at your bedroom. How much ventilation are you allowing into that bedroom? You know, is it adequate? So right now we ask for 10%. I think it should be more like 25% because we should not have to be depending on artificial ventilation as much as we do right now. So basically, it's a movement from outside, and then we move closer into the actual individual application, the needs of the individual in assessing every single application that comes in.
Now, does planning take into consideration the changes that might occur? I know you're using Dominica as an example. Does it take into consideration changes such as population growth? So what happens, you have a perfectly planned community, like you mentioned, goodwill. I would like to think Baphoset was somewhere along the lines too, because we were pretty much residential with a playing field. We had, a couple of schools. We have a couple of shops. So a nice mix of, we used to have the river. As far as I know, it's dried up. So I think my generation was the last generation to fully enjoy that Baphoset River. But what happens as the population grows? Does planning take into account the changes that will come as we talk about the next generation? And if so, how does it accommodate for that?
So Goodwill is a perfect example. The increased density in Goodwill is almost inevitable. And thank God there was good planning, because look at the width of Federation Drive. It can accommodate a lot more than the average road in a subdivision, which I think has to be 29 feet right of way. Goodwill is much wider than the average subdivision road. So if you have good practice, then you can plan for a population explosion or for the future needs of expansion of the CBD, for instance. These are all things that have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And we cannot have this conversation in the vacuum, right? So we have to look at day wash, because we all know that is one of the biggest concerns that Dominican have. And I think that is one of the reasons I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because as somebody already said, they're being educated about the importance of planning and just what planning is. So I think that is where, I think for many of us, that is the first time we heard about the planning department and the planning division, unless if you had recently built a house or something. So what was the concerns with a day wash? And then we also want to spend some time this evening, Annie, because we know you have a 2045 plan for Marigot, speaking about planning and economic development, because this all ties into economic development. One of the reasons that we do all of this planning is because we want to make sure we have areas that, for sustainable development purposes, you do not destroy Dominica as the nature island, but you also need areas for economic viability, right? So tell us, what was the concern? So we're kind of just breaking down everything so our audience can once and for all understand the concerns that came up with day wash. Would you like to speak on that?
Yes. So earlier, Juliette gave the definition of planning, and if you notice, the definition of planning includes sustainable development. So, and our program tonight is planning for sustainable development. Now, sustainable development has two components, as was explained: environmental, social, and economic. And what it means is that through the development, through the definition itself, whatever you do, sustainable development means development today which you enjoy that will not affect the ability of future and generations to also enjoy it. So whatever you do to develop your country, do not do it in such a manner that it affects the ability of future generations to enjoy the resources or whatever you are damaging. So in the case of Dave Wash is everything that goes against the environmental aspect of sustainable development. Um, sustainable, what makes sustainable development very critical today is the fact that we are now faced with what you call climate change. So in the past years, they were talking about sustainable development and a lot of people use it as a buzzword. But what is very critical today that when you think about sustainable development, you think of climate change. And what does climate change mean? It means that now we are faced with more intense hurricanes, more intense and frequent storms, floods. We are living through it. We think of Tropical Storm Erica, which was just a tropical storm. It wasn't even a hurricane, and it destroyed an entire community. We have to think, and what happened is that the massive landslides took place and just overwhelmed the community. You have issue of rising sea level. There's also the issue of the heating of the atmosphere, which is causing which we experience for more intense droughts and so on. So climate change is real and we cannot dispute that. So well, whatever is done as a country, whether for planning or just governance, the issue of climate change and policies that will be strategies. In the case of Dave Wash is located the area where the quarrying is taking place is located in a watershed. On watershed is that area of land or where the waters, accumulate and it fall at the top of the mountain, and all the different tributaries come down on different sides of the mountain and they join eventually to form a major river. So it is part of a very, very important watershed. In fact, Pegua River is one of the largest rivers in Dominica. It's among the larger rivers. It is a very steep area. It's a mountain, so it's steep. And once you start deforesting a mountain, you loosen the soil and then you have landslides. So when you add the fact that we have climate change, more intense hurricanes, um, more intense hurricanes and more intense floods, then you can think that just think of what's happening at Deepwash and the impact of a very intense hurricane on that land. The trees are being, it is now bared up a lot of the vegetation, and so it can no longer hold the moisture. They So the land is also more loose. There will be massive landslides, and and also the impact on the river. The river is right at the foot of the mountain, so a lot of this debris, and also in the case of the wash, the different minerals that are in the ground, all this is getting into the river already, and we understood from research that the in testing the river, they found that there are things like arsenic and mercury that are 500 times greater. The quantity is 500 times greater than what is acceptable by the World Health Organization. So there are a number of other aspects,
Mhm.
to consider for date wash, other the technical aspect, the fact that people are saying, but where is the material to be quarried? You I as part of my work at the plan department, I was involved in monitoring quarries, and I know what an active quarry look like. You enter the quarry area and you see the material on the surface. But in the case of the wash, there's hardly any material on the surface, and so they now have to remove all the topsoil and dig into the ground to to get the material that they're looking for. And it's a lot of material that is presently being transported from Marigot to Londonderry for storage. So climate change is one of the aspects that raise a big red flag for there, and added to other things like the deforestation, getting too close to the Northern Forest Reserve and the Central Forest Reserve. These are protected areas. The minerals that have been unearthed and polluting the waters. The people who live in the area, the fact that they have not been considered. The social aspect of sustainable development deals with the well-being of the people, and just not ignoring the people, especially the indigenous people of the area who have for centuries depended on the river for survival. There are just too many red flags, and if a proper EIA was done, that area would not be approved for a quarry. There's also the economic aspect. So we go back to the same thing: sustainable development, environmental, economic, and social. There are a number of guest houses and also maybe one or two hotels in the area that depend on the river. They do river tubing, the guests enjoy the river. It- so right away it's affecting the economic activity in the area. So yeah, it's a combination of
Yeah, and I'm really happy we're having this conversation, and a number of folks are saying that they're learning so much this evening. So thank you again, ladies, and also a special thank you to the young people, especially forgetting his name, Gary August, Janelle Brisbane, and all the others who are standing up, Nasir Fountain, and everybody else who's standing up to fight for exactly what you're saying. But this is what I want us to do, because I think we're doing a great job of sort of breaking down the information so that the regular person on the ground, the common man, can understand this information. So Juliette, I want you to explain to us, as a former chief planner, I want you to explain to a former chief physical planner, explain to us the steps for a major project like that, from the inception to what should have been done first, second, and third. So let's take Daywash or any other major project in Dominica and tell us the steps that are required, the protocol that is required to follow, so that our audience have an understanding of exactly what should have been done.
Okay, so the steps may vary depending on the type of project. So if you're looking at a debosh project, you come up with your proposal for the quarry, the type of equipment you're going to be using, what the processes are you going to do any blasting, how you're going to dispose of your waste. Basically, you prepare an EIA that will cover all of these things, and the necessary drawings, the area that you're going to be deforesting, the just like the details of the project you submit. And what the planning division does, once it receives those details and the application, it then forwards it to other departments where there's relevant expertise. So planning, obviously, us planners are a bit interdisciplinary. We know a little bit about everything, but we know when we need a certain expert. So we call that person in. And that's what happens to all plans that come into the department. If we feel we need an expert in a particular area, we get that person to come on board to help us review that plan. So once that's done, the plans are taken with the advice of the different agencies, or sometimes you can consult a private body, and it's brought into a technical committee. And on that committee, you have engineers and architects and environmental health specialists, and a wide cross section of the relevant expertise is represented, and they consider the plan. And it's at that meeting that they come up with conditions of approval, or they tell you the application is disapproved because of XYZ. So it's a straightforward process, but what you have to submit varies depends on the type of application that you're submitting.
And do we have any evidence that this was done in the case of Daywash?
Well, I don't work there, and whenever you call anymore, and whenever you call them, they're so. I mean, several times I called for basic information just for me to know the status, and they're almost scared to answer. They're scared because of, again, political interference. That's all we can assume. So you ask the chief planner a question, and he'll say, "Well, I have to bring it to the board," or so they basically, just like skirt around the issue, and I can only believe it's because they're wary of the political implications.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, does the public have a right to know the outcomes of
Right.
whether a plan was approved or denied or sent back for review? Does the public have a right?
Public participation is a big section of the act. Certain applications have to have public participation incorporated into the review, and the application, not the entire file with all the details of correspondence, but the application and the decision is public information. So, and if an EIA is part of that application, then that too is public information. So yeah, that's basically the process, and it's just not working as smoothly as it ought to.
And I want to go back very quickly. We'll come back, but I want to go back very quickly to one of the points that you mentioned earlier while you're on the mic, Juliette. You talked about, I believe it was historic buildings, preservations of somewhere along those lines. So tell us about the information in terms of physical planning and buildings and what is required and what can become a violation. So kind of just talk to us, because we see a number of like historic buildings just being wiped off in Dominica, replaced with other buildings. So kind of just tell us how does physical planning relate to the historic preservation of Dominica?
Okay, so the historic. Okay, so the act allows the chief planner and the physical planning authority to designate an area, like almost like a development plan for a particular part of Roseau, for instance. So you can designate an area for historic preservation. You can look at individual buildings in that area and designate it as buildings to preserve. But that hasn't been done. It hasn't followed the entire the legal requirements to get it to the point where it's officially designated. And of course, if your building is officially designated for preservation, and the act also allows you, the government, to work with you if you feel you need more incentives to maintain the building. The act allows for that sort of income tax relief. There's lots of room for that, the implementation of that type of designation. So, but that hasn't been done formally on any building that I know of in Roseau. We have tried over the years to get it to the point where it is actually a thing, but each time it was stopped at the point where at the minister's level. So when I remember when I was there, I did quite a bit of work in that regard. And when it got, I think Timothy was the minister, one of the ministers, it got them, they were like, no, we're not ready for this. So it has never been fulfilled, and that part of the act is not being implemented.
So just so we have a clear understanding, so are we saying that none of the historic buildings in Dominica are officially recognized as historic? What?
No.
Oh.
No. And exactly. So, yeah, because incentives have to go along with that. If I have a building and my building has to be preserved, I'm limited by what I can and cannot do. So, really and truly, I have a right to appeal or demand some sort of incentive from government because of that designation.
So, in essence, there's no protection for historic There's no true protection for historic
So it's a
buildings.
here
And so we're
today,
gonna, so we're losing
gone
our
tomorrow.
history. We can lose our history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can. In
Wow.
that way, our architectural heritage is certainly under threat by, yeah, it gets worse and worse. We see a lot of buildings in Roseau. Up to this week, there's a building coming down on Cork Street. There's another one that, so it's getting worse and worse. There's a lot of development going on in and around Roseau.
Well, I think that was breaking news for many of us, because I think we were under the impression that there are certain buildings in Dominica that have historic preservation protection.
Yeah.
But
And what happens is, because these buildings remain in disrepair, then it just almost, by the time somebody wants to develop it, it's gone too far. You know, that kind of thing. So they just break it down or they burn it.
that is sad. Any thoughts you want to share on that? That is truly disappointing to hear. I'm sure many in our audience, that's a concern for many of us. Any thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, just Juliette didn't mention that we also have a proposed Roseau Historic District.
But it's proposed.
Oh, yes.
Proposed.
But that was a lot of great work that was done during while Juliette was chief physical planner. So all the buildings in Roseau were classified either either preservation, rehabilitation, or demolition. So there's a whole database of that, the maps for the district, and everything is there. And
notices were sent out to people. Preliminary notices were sent out. It just never got to the point where the politician was ready to bring it into cabinet to get it approved and onward to parliament. That just never got.
And so we've lost the
willingness wasn't there to do it.
And so we remain in limbo, because at any time, since there's no protection, these buildings can be removed in the name of
it's not only private buildings. We have like the Burkoon building is there, the library, the public library.
Yep.
We have other church like the
Anglican Church, Catholic Church.
There was
the Catholic Church. You said the Catholic Church.
Exactly. These people could then apply for all types of incentives, and their buildings would be completed by now.
Exactly.
But why would the government not be interested in protecting these buildings? I think that is the question that naturally comes to mind. Why would we not be interested in preserving our
sometimes
buildings as part of our history?
Sometimes they have their own personal interest in the building.
That's good. Sometimes
one thing you must say, like Mrs. He's deceased now, Timothy. Juliette said he wasn't ready for it, but he did maintain his building.
He told me that he's not going to take that any further than it is in the box, because I sent up all the documents, because he was going to put a 5-story glass building.
So you see, sometimes it's private. Private interest.
I mean,
but he changed his mind in the end, and he maintained that is such a lovely building.
Yeah, and I have to say there has to be a call to action, because I think this is breaking news for many of us with this information. And are we just going to sit by and allow politicians to wipe out our physical history by destroying buildings that have been in existence since the 1800s and the 1900s? I mean, I'm still stuck on the Catholic Church because I'm Catholic. I think that there is truly no protection of buildings like that. I think it's a call to action to Dominicans that this should be of importance.
Yeah, so I can tell you that if there is a change of government, and I am part of that team, that definitely will put emphasis on heritage preservation. Because
so tell us a little bit more about that, Juliette, because we know we're in the UWP. So tell us.
That in itself is there's an economic opportunity there. So like just imagine you have a Roseau that has a historic district, and we do all what we have to do to make that happen. That is a tourist attraction. You understand? So tourists, we go to Europe all the time and we visit old cities, and it is the heritage preservation that brings us to these places. And Roseau still has potential to be a iconic capital city of the Caribbean, because it has so much to preserve still. Despite the threat, there's still so much to preserve. So that's something that I would love to see happen. Um, and yeah, yeah, given the opportunity, I'll certainly put a lot of energy in that.
Yeah, I'm still sick. I'm still sitting in shock while we're having this conversation. But the time is ticking by very quickly. So, guys, on the Facebook and the YouTube live, keep the questions coming. I'm seeing them. We're gonna take them in just a little bit. But before we go to the studio for a break, let us just talk about violations, right? So who's policing the physical planning department? How are violations handled in terms of the work that the physical planning department does?
Violations by
Not following the protocols.
yeah. Well, the office each officer is responsible for a district, whether it's in north, the northern district, northeast. It's organized in a way. Sorry about that. Yeah. It's organized. The way it's organized is that each office, there are five officers, and the country is divided into district. So each officer is basically what you said, is responsible for policing his district. So you go, if your intent really is to go and check buildings that are under development, that are being constructed. But if when you go, you notice that the person is either billing contrary to the approved plans, or you notice some illegal activity taking place, like that person does not have planning permission, then you write out what is called a compliance notice. So that compliance notice basically says you have, I visited your site and you are not in compliance with your approved plan because of X, Y, and Z, or you have not obtained planning permission. And it gives you 28 days within which you have to remedy this breach. And you remedy the breach by either applying for planning permission, or whatever you're doing wrong, you reverse it and make it compliant. So that's simple, in simple terms, what happens. But there is also the higher level called a stop order, and that was issued in the case of Game Wash. Now this stop order is only issued in the if there's a health issue or an environmental issue being violated. So it's in the interest of public health and safety that you issue a stop order. So in the case of Wash, the impact on the river, the impact on the landscape, all this was violation of the environment, and also the health issue was the arsenic and mercury found in the water. Now, for this stop order to be issued, it must be accompanied by the compliance notice. Your issues to the compliance notice again will define what you have done and how you remedy it. And but the stop order tells you you must stop instantly. But in the case of the compliance notice, as I said, you have 28 days. The stop order is issued because it is of such a great, it's such a great violation that you are needed to stop instantly, and that's the reason stop order will be issued. When the stop order is issued, you have to stop instantly. If you violate that stop order, the law says that you are supposed to be charged $1,000 for each day that breach continues. But again, this is not, it has never been, I don't recall this being implemented at any time, because again, it's the Attorney General's office that has to do that sort of work. So you can see the where there is a conflict of interest, because if it's a government project, for instance, how do you get the Attorney General's office to take this matter to court? You understand? Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's Plan
Exactly.
Yes, good,
it's
Juliet.
supposed to,
So exactly. So if the corporation, if the planning authority was operating as it should, then they can engage their own lawyer. They don't have to go to the government attorney. You
yeah.
understand? So it is because we have tied ourselves so much to the public service, to the that we are stuck. In other
Yes,
words, I would go back to the intention of the law, and I would operate planning as an independent statutory body to restrict and to limit the political interference in its operations.
yeah,
I
definitely. And what is the current status of DEBA? Should it stop order is still in place? But is any work being done
Um,
in that area as far as we know?
from what I'm hearing, the plans for Daywash have been approved. We have been trying our best to get a copy of that approval letter. In fact, a particular person has been pursuing it. And in fact, on Friday, he was invited to come in and look at what approval letter is in place. So yeah, it's after that we'll know exactly what were the conditions of approval. But we understand that it
Interesting.
has been approved.
Yes, so this is a wonderful program, and we're very fortunate to have two former chief physical planners with us this evening to give us some information, Mrs. Annie Edwards as well as Miss Juliette Shillingford, and we are so grateful that they're here with us. It looks like we've lost connection to the studio, but luckily we're still live on Facebook and YouTube. So we're looking at the importance of town and country planning for the sustainable development of Dominica. And if you've missed the first portion of the program, you will certainly want to go back and listen to why all of this is important and what exactly is physical planning. So again, we've lost connection to the studio, but thankfully we're still live on Facebook and YouTube, and we have quite a bit of interaction on Facebook and YouTube. So ladies, if you need to grab a sip of water, you can do so while I engage with the Facebook audience. And then we're going to jump in, Annie, into your 2045 plan, because I'm sure that you've taken into consideration everything that we're talking about. So we're going to look more closely at that plan for Marigot, and then we're going to try to extrapolate it into the other communities of Dominica, because when we think of sustainable development, yes, Marigot, your home community is important, but I'm sure you're also thinking about the other communities. And if we can all develop our communities, what would Dominica look like? So again, good evening to you, Greg Baptiste. Margot is here. Ronald B. Charles, nice to have you on board. He says excellent stuff. Margot says, yes, Doc, how do we have so many violations? Marcelin Edwards, great to see you. She says, good evening, Simone, your panel and everyone connected to this link. And Juliette, I see you, big up. And then we have Frederick Amor. Good evening, everyone. Great program. We have Margel Duran. Nice to see you. He's watching. Margot, how about the past 10 years? Alvin Thomas is here, my neighbor here in Georgia. He says, good evening, Simone, and your guest joined in late, but enjoying the conversation. Thank you for being here, Alvin. Let's see who else we have. Madlex, Crazy Lex Bruno. I appreciate knowledge-based discussion. Thank you for being here, Madlex. Maslin says government should be the vanguard of all its institutions and should be seen as upholding all the legalities and functions of those institutions. Having said that, the government should not be the first violator of the rules and regulations of any government institution in such a reckless and callous manner. What it says is the government is above the Constitution under which those institutions function, which leads me to ask, why should the ordinary man follow the rules of planning? That's a great question. Make a note of that, ladies. If the government is in violation, then why should the ordinary man follow the rules of planning? That's a great question. Errol Emmanuel, great to see you, Errol. Happy that some discussion on debauch is taking place. Thank you for that. Maslin, debauch is another nauseating issue that is allowed to happen in the name of development, but the entire country will pay the price for what we fail to do as a people and that's protecting our land. And then she continues, but how do these projects start without planning permission? The international airport started before the EIA was submitted. Belham and Cropole were blasted with no EIA. How do we stop these illegal activities? So that's a great question. Let's take a pause right here because I think we're getting some great questions and I do not want us to lose sight of those questions. So if the government is in violation, as we saw in the case of Dave Wash, why should the ordinary man comply with the rules and the regulations? I think that's a great question.
If your neighbor is breaking the law, it doesn't mean that you have to break it too. I mean,
That's a good question. That's a good point.
it's like,
That's a good point. I like that. And then the next question, the international airport started Belham. How do we stop the illegal activities? So how do we get people to follow planning
take
protocol?
government to court, just as we can take a private citizen to court. We need to follow through. In other words, get our own get the physical planning authority should have its own lawyer to pursue all its cases instead of depending on the Department of Legal Affairs.
Right. So so essentially saying that the way it is set up right now, it is faulty. That
Right.
it should be a separate body. It is too closely
There should be
connected to the
some
government.
independence. There should be some independence.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the studio is coming back on. So let's see if they pop in. There we go. We are back. We should be live on the radio, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you for hanging there with us. Let's see if we are reconnected back to the studio. But let's keep the comments going in the meantime. My mom, Medina Senaos, good evening, Darrows, and great guest, great show, listening. Marston is here again. Dominica seems to be managed by lawlessness. And let's see, Margot, the quarry at Desbois is going to be a pit mine. Then we have Errol, very interested and important information. Thanks for the education, Errol. You're welcome and nice to see you here. Then Margot, political interference seems to be the answer to all my questions. Marcelin, until now, no meeting from government and other interested persons on the Desbois issue with the Concord people. And then Margot says the Old Roseau program was initiated but died soon after. Catherine, George, nice to see you. Very informative. Dave Bertrand, great to see you. The government is not interested in preserving historic buildings because they want to build their hotels. Errol, we have already lost some. The home of Jean Reeves, one of the leading literary authors whose books are still being used in literature courses in universities in the UK, was demolished in Roseau with absolutely no sense of the value of the heritage buildings, which are tied to heritage tourism. Margot, what if they had no permission? Let's see, let's go down. Paula Emmanuel, thank you for being here. Paula, great information about our unique city, its importance to preserve and maintain our historic buildings while we enhance the economic vibrancy of the city. Serious discussion. Thank you, Paula. Thank you for being here. Wilworth, nice to see you, Wilworth. What about the preservation of the old sugarcane mills from slavery? For example, we have 2 in Wesley that are covered under vegetation. I believe these sites can be rehabilitated as tourist attractions. Bernard Arlene, thank you for being here, Bernard. Great to see you. Good night, honorable ladies. Dominica is quite uniquely blessed in the city of Roseau with such historic architecture, and I am certainly of the view that much more should be done to preserve them. The city of Roseau could become a hub for historic filmmaking. If only we save those buildings, this could be a significant economic driver from which many within our society could benefit financially, it would enhance our tourism product big time, and we could then make an even more unique. So I'm going to pause right here because we have quite a few comments, and we're so grateful that everyone is so passionate about this. But Juliet, I think we can see the concern, right, about these historic buildings not really being protected. So what are your thoughts based on all we are seeing in the comments?
Well, I mean, clearly there's huge support for that sort of decision. I'm, I'm getting a call from Annie Edwards. I don't know what's going on. Okay,
Uh-oh.
sorry. Okay, maybe she just called me by in error.
Okay.
Um, yeah, historic preservation ought to be a priority. I mean, I know we have all the factory works around the island, the old estate works. But in Roseau, in particular, there's such a concentration of historic buildings that priority for the government, the parliamentary representative. Um, I'm a bit baffled as to why we haven't picked up on this. I started working on historic preservation in 1993.
Wow.
What Annie was referring to. That's the first thing. The first day I was at planning, I was given the law to read, the act to read, and I read it and I said, "Oh my goodness, look at this section!" And then I started my work, the formation of SHAPE, the Society for Historic Architectural Preservation and Enhancement. Came out of that effort, and so we can be an advocate out there for it. And after all these years, it's still not a priority. It's just a bit baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to come to you, Annie, for your views, but I'm just
I'm not
thinking
hearing
this is such.
Simone.
Oh, you're not hearing me? Oh, let me. I'm gonna put a
And as
message.
I think it would be well received to if the public would receive it well, if that effort was put in there. Like for
Right,
instance,
right.
if you walk on the streets of Roseau, particularly near the old market, you will see the remnants of cobblestones, like
Yes.
literally stones laid 250 plus years ago, just lining the gutters, because what they did, they passed over and they put tarish. No, I'm not tarish, asphalt. I'm not saying that every road in Roseau should be restored, but at least a section of Roseau should be a historic district, and we can have cobblestone streets so that you can have that experience as a visitor and as a local, because it's part of our identity, who we are. Our architectural heritage, um, it defines us to some extent, and we shouldn't turn our back on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I'm thinking of. That this is such a myopic view because here we are destroying these historic buildings, and you and a number of folks on the Facebook Live mentioned historic tourism. That a lot of people, because I think one of the things that we are missing in all of this discussion, and this is one of the reasons we talk about here on Roots Connections, the changes we ought to make for sustainable development, is we're missing the part, and I keep saying it over and over. Tourism now is about experiences, right? Because I can go to any island in the Caribbean and see the same sea, beaches, the same, some have waterfalls, some don't have waterfalls, but it is the same geographic locations, right? Because I go to St. Lucia looks like Dominica, right? I go to Antigua and Barbados look the same. So what people are yearning for, especially after COVID-19, are experiences. I want to come and I want to experience your island. Right now, you're gonna tear down all the historic buildings, which would be part of my experience of your island, and you're gonna put up hotels. These hotels, I can go to any island and get into a hotel that looks exactly like that hotel,
Yeah.
right? So it's a missed opportunity, and I think that is why we're getting so much feedback on it on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. So they don't only want an experience; they want an authentic
Right,
experience. They want to learn about us, who
right.
we are, how do we live, what do we eat, and that's where the architectural heritage can come in, because it tells them a story about who we are.
And
And
what
that's
we
the offensive.
survived, what we survived, because I'm thinking about the area in the market where the slaves were sold.
Exactly. The old market square.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, that was where they brought the slaves to be traded, and it's just covered in God knows little booths that
Right.
take away from the whole experience, because
Mm-hmm.
all you see is these vendor booths. And I'm not saying the vendors are not important, but that may not be the optimum place to have them.
Right, right.
We
And
take
Annie, we're
away
coming to you,
from
but
the
it just
appreciation of the so we're taking away the value of that
yeah.
by just covering it with
And,
vendors.
and and when I come back to you, I want you to share your vision as the candidate for UWP regarding all of this, because I think again it is a missed opportunity when we say, if not the CBI, then what? But here are the opportunities. Here are all the missed opportunities that we have not been taken advantage of, right? Because we're so laser focused on this citizen by investment program. But let us take a quick pause because we didn't get a chance to go to the studio to invite the callers to call in. So, Lambi, if you can hear me, let's invite our callers. And then, Annie, I'm going to come to you for your thoughts. And then, Juliette, I want you to comment on, if not the CBI, then what? Because these are some of the ideas that I'm thinking that you, as a candidate for UWP, would look towards implementing. So, Lambi, over to you.
Root and Q, taking your calls at the moment. The numbers are as follow: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are all local numbers. The international or the overseas number is 305-432-9624. I run these one more time: 449-3095-9697, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Back to you, Simon.
Yes, thank you. And let's take a couple of comments because we're so grateful for the feedback on Facebook. So Net Packet says, Rosa continues to experience congestion, limited parking, aging infrastructure, and a concentration of commercial activity in a small area. Can you guys provide an example of a long-term physical development plan to reduce overcrowding in Roseau while encouraging balanced growth in other communities across Dominica? That's a good question. So Annie, you want to share some thoughts and take a stab at that question?
Um, well, actually, if you look at the national physical development plan, it speaks specifically to that. Dominica, it has been already divided up into zones. They exist so as the zone in the north would have Portsmouth as the town. Then you go across to the northeast, you have Marigot being one zone, Cassie Bruce another one, La Plaine, and then Grand Bay, Rose. So it's the physical development plan has dealt with all that, and in each zone there are specific activities that must take place. So, for instance, you would have like a government office offering all types of services. You have certain levels of administration, government administrative work taking place. You have certain commercial activities, supermarkets. So if Dominica is planned according to the physical development plan, it would address the major problem that's in Roseau. If you notice, on a normal day, traffic into Roseau, people stay in traffic for hours before they can get to their work. Now, if proper planning is taking place, that would be avoided because these people in their different areas would go to the major town or whatever in that area and carry out all the activities. I heard recently that they are bringing some activities to Portsmouth that has been long in the making. So it's just lack of planning that has us where we are. The government's after governments have just disregarded the idea of proper planning for Dominica. Dominica planning has been taken. There have been plans for Dominica, development plans from as far back as the 1950s, 1960s, 1980s. So every 10 years there would be new development plans done, and no, they are just totally disregarded. And that is the result of that's the result that we are seeing today. Just a congested city, a lot of vehicles are now being parked on the sidewalk. People have to walk in the road instead of the sidewalk.
Yep.
All these things are happening. You come basic things you have to do in Dominica. You have to come to Roseau. Then one of the things that worsen the situation is that after the hurricane, a lot of government offices, for instance, like the planning department that were on the outskirts, have not now been brought into Roseau. So government is renting buildings for a lot of offices. So it's just total lack of planning. And if we just go back to our structure plans or physical plans and start working from that standpoint, then we'll start to see real change in Dominica. Right now, it's just by development that's taking place.
Yeah, and again, I think you guys pointed it out very well that everybody has their own agenda. I think we have a call coming in, and then Juliette, your plans for the city when we come back.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. With us. Go ahead, please. Good night.
Oh, we can't hear. We can't hear.
Edward, Matthew, Simone Mathieu, good night. And
Good evening to you, sir.
Shillingford. I've been listening to that discussion on the development of the human resources, tourism, agriculture, whatever, manufacturing. I am very, very enlightened of all the plans, but we are going in the century, and all those things you talk about there, I have seen them things that have been implemented from the late 60s, the early 70s, because I'm from Marigot. We had a bank in Marigot. We had a big enterprise on West Flat. People would leave all the way from Good Hope, Castle Bruce, St. Sylvester, Bakers, Penville. They would come up to Marigot and shop. The owner had two trucks. Lambert is older than me. Lambert knows about it. He had two trucks. One would go to the east, one would go to the west coast, Bakers, Penville, and they would carry passengers to come up and shop. I mean, I don't know how again to explain the situation. I don't know if it's the modern time that keep up on us and we lost our identity and our culture. The people have to understand not everything the government is going to do. Even they have the powers to do it, because I have noticed politics have tried to marry got under embargo from the 60s, because after we vote for Libra, there were certain people that influenced Libra to first marry got even fire the parliament people. So I believe now is the time people should wake up. I was up there, I used to do a lot. I never get the support in tourism, in farming, in small business. But the people now supposed to wake up. They are leaders who vote for politics supposed to. I mean, they have the influence to help. I understand everything Mr. Edwards saying, but then the system not going to give you that breakthrough. Because even some of the people in the society not supporting you. I remember when I developed this paper, the waterfall, I didn't get the support. I spent a lot of my own money. Not even on the government side I get support, and I was crying out for support. One of the things I wanted to do is to get that area up there to be on the tourist map. But when the people overnight and the overnight tourists would stop at the waterfall, and it was a very hectic to get that on the map, the tourist map, but I spent all my money. Then a young man come on the other side of the river, devastate the whole area. They cut down all the trees, cut down all the buffer zone on the river. And no people in authority had ever tell him nothing. I don't even believe he had his facility convenience over there like in past human beings. And what I noticed after I developed my style in the Marigot era, which is in the Debus era, he left the criterion land and he come and he encroach and he would take over the whole car park. And none of the indigenous people never tell him that property is not that property is not the indigenous people property. But even whilst I was there, he was trying to get confused me with the landlord. So it's a lot of work we have to do. Lambert is from Marigot. Lambert is a very excellent bird, bird watching tour. But who really recognize him and support him and let it train younger people, even within Marigot? We don't have to wait on government. We can set up a program that we train. Look at all the beaches at Marigot. We have some of the best beaches. We have a great sand beach right in Marigot at Sunday. We have the black sand beach at Cabana. We have the black sand beach at Happy Garden. But it's the leaders, the same thing with this lady saying there. Sometimes we are the ones to get up and do it. We can build a university in Marigot. We all these bright doctors. These are people that have masters, you know. They don't we need to build a university and get the African children like what is in Rosewood there.
Yes, all great ideas, caller.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes, very great ideas. Thank you, as always, for your contribution. Juliet, yes, your plans for the city, because I think we have to, one of the things we have to do when we're in politics is listen to the voice of the people, and just having our Facebook and YouTube participants seeing the need that they're talking about in terms of preserving our heritage, our architectural heritage. Just tell us some of your plans as a new candidate, and again, congratulations on being a new candidate for the UWP political party. So tell us what your vision is.
Well, for now, and that's the first thing any planner does. Well, not that, I mean, yeah, it's to listen to the people. So I listen as a politician and I listen as a planner. Because most times they know the problems. There are many problems, and even unique to the area of Roseau that you're from, and put it all together to come up with a development plan for the city when we take office, basically, or hopefully we will in the next general elections, and begin implementation. So, for instance, that roads and sidewalk reinstatement program, that started in the 1990s, the late 1990s. And all the roads and sidewalks were surveyed with funds from CEDA, that's the Canadian International Development Agency. I remember. So it is almost 30 years that project is sitting there waiting to be implemented. And it's not. So that's one of the first things I would like to see happen. It's just overdue, to be quite frank. I spoke about the historic district. One of the problems, like a caller earlier said, that there's congestion in Roseau. Well, have you been to Roseau lately? Even at month end, there's less people.
Hey.
Yes, it's true. So the congestion may not be as bad as it was before. But anyway, there is congestion, limited parking spaces, and I don't think we have tackled that properly. Using up all your parking, roadside parking. If it's not no parking, if it's not for offloading and loading only, it is getting used. It is bus stop. There's every reason not to find parking in your city, and all you want to do when you come into Roseau, most likely, is to stop and purchase either services or goods, and you cannot find parking. So you go round and round and round. And another thing is that the people that work there for 8 hours, they park on the road, but they're in an office for the entire day. So the people that come in for short stay don't have the opportunity to find parking, and oftentimes they just get frustrated and they leave with their money in their pocket, or they literally go round and round and round in circles, and they park further afield and they come in after that. So, or they just don't come at all. So there's a feeling like if I don't have to go into Roseau, I will not, because parking is a primary issue. So we have to tackle that problem, and we have to do it sooner rather than later. Those are three of the big pointers that I've come across, and projects that I'd like to tackle um, as
Yeah, the winnings of-
dementia representative.
Annie, you were saying, thank you,
I was
Juliette.
saying that don't forget the botanic gardens.
Well, of course, there's all aspects to Roseau. It's not just parking. It's not just walkability is a problem. It is not a friendly city to walk in. And when you can walk, when you have sidewalks, when you can park your car and walk, you're gonna end up spending more money as you walk along. So it is
Yep.
not a friendly city in that respect. So that goes back to the road reinstatement project, road reinstatement and sidewalks, road and sidewalk reinstatement. The greening of the city, the botanical gardens is an underutilized, like not many cities have access to a few acres of green space right within, the area. And there's so much that can be done there for the people, not for some foreign company or some commercial venture. We need to redevelop the gardens for the people, for their recreation, for their wellness, for their sports, for their well-being. And that's another thing that I would definitely pay attention to. So yeah, there's no lack of ideas, and yeah, I'm really enjoying meeting the people of Roseau, being one myself. I'm really enjoying going around and meeting everybody and listening to their stories and their experiences and their needs and their frustrations. And I feel very blessed to do
Yeah,
that, to have
absolutely.
the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so I think we've done a great job of talking about what is physical planning, why it is important, the importance of implementing it correctly, the importance of violations and what should happen. But Annie, the reason I started even thinking about this program is because I saw that you did a program called Mariga 2045, and you are looking at 6 areas of development. And I thought that fits so very nicely into what we are talking about today, because in a nutshell, we are talking about the sustainable development of Dominica. So the 6 areas of the Mariga 2045 plan include economic development, tourism and culture, youth and education, agriculture and food security, community infrastructure and housing, environmental and climate resilience. So I think all of this kind of falls in nicely to what we're talking about in terms of planning. How do we, as communities, as towns, as cities, as different areas in Dominica, how do we plan for 2045? And first question, how did you come up with 2045? Is there significance to
Well,
the year 2045?
2045 is actually 20 years from now.
Okay.
So, the whole idea of planning for the community, it just came up because first of all, you have to plan for different levels. So there is a national plan, there is a regional plan, and then you can have smaller plans for communities and so on. So, and I think that sort of thing is really lacking in Dominica, because looking back at the last 26 years, for instance, um, a quarter century has evolved, and people, you get the feeling that people have just given up, like they no longer feel empowered, and everything is just given up. All their power has been given to the politicians. So what I'm saying is that it's time we take back that power, and and I think, as you say, it should be done in every community. People sit in their communities and plan how they would like their community to develop in the next 20 years. And so, if it's done properly, a large number of persons in the community sit together, similar to what Juliette is doing, But I had it more in a forum where people come together and they thrash out ideas. And what I did was just give them topics to deliberate on. I sort of guided them. Like maybe mine is a top-down approach and Juliet's own is a bottom-up approach, but basically doing the same thing. I'm just guiding them, and I selected these six topics, and
So kind of tell us what falls under each of the topics, because what I like to do is to use a template. Let's call this a template, so that folks, we see a lot of these reunions in all the communities, and it is wonderful, right? But my thought is, and I'm grateful I've had pretty much just about everybody who's had a reunion come on Roots Connections, and that is wonderful. But the question I always leave them with is, what happens after the reunion? So that kind of leads very nicely in terms of what you're doing, because it is not just about having a 2 or 3 weeks reunion. Yes, that's going to impact the community positively, but you're looking at a long-term strategy until 2045 for this development of Marigot area. So kind of just tell us some of what falls under the different departments. So when you say economic development, what are you looking at? What are your thoughts for Marigot in particular?
Okay, so on the economic development, the aim would be to support small businesses. So we know that each community has already, I know for Marigot, for instance, there are a number of small businesses. Some of them are cottage industries. Some people, Marigot is famous for its bread and cakes and things like tablets and different types of oils, coconut oil, all types of it. So there are a number of small businesses, teas and so forth. But there are a lot of people who don't have that kind of, they might have the idea, but they don't have the ability to really have it materialize into some kind of product. So what I was thinking is that we could set up something like a business incubation unit, and people who have the ideas and people who already are in business could come together, form this committee where we pull our ideas together and help each other. So, for instance, right now everybody is operating in silos, but if you have something that you call an incubation unit, then through that, for instance, you can have persons who know about business development, writing of business plans, and so on, being part of that group and assisting these young persons who have an idea in their mind but cannot bring it through to fruition, to give them that assistance. So you can have somebody in marketing. Because when you start to talk in that way and bring people together, then you realize how many different skills that are in your community, or even not in your community, but in your community's diaspora. So that's why I came up with the idea of a business incubation unit. That's something.
And in the interest of time, what I think we can do is take two more, and then since we're looking to expand this, and I'm sure you don't have a problem with folks taking this as a template for the other community.
I think it should be done in every community.
Yeah, because like the caller said, we cannot keep waiting for the government, and that is one of the goals of this program, that we stop waiting on the government and we pull up ourselves by our own bootstraps. So what I would like us to do, because again, the time always runs away from us, I want you to touch on two other important of the 6 areas. And then Juliette, I want you to kind of take these and say what that would look like for your community in Roseau. So we can already start giving folks ideas of how can I use this plan for my community to help to develop my community. So Annie, let's do 2 more that you're passionate about. And then Juliette, you can feel free to take any of the 6 and tell us how that would look for Roseau. And those who are listening and watching, I want you to to think about what that would look like as we all work to develop our community. So maybe from Bafisset, what would that look like if I took that plan and implemented it in Bafisset? So again, the six, for those of us who are listening on the radio: economic development, tourism and culture, youth and education, agriculture and food security, community infrastructure and housing, environment, and climate resilience. So Annie, take two more and then Juliet will come to you.
Okay, so the next one I would really like to push is tourism and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already started that work in Margaret through the formation of Margaret Community Tourism Committee, which was formed in 2010, 11, around that time. I formed it when because I studied that as part of my master's degree program. And so I formed that community tourism group, had it registered, well established, and it has survived, right? It's still very vibrant. But what I have noticed is that it has not really achieved what I set out to do, which is the developing the community tourism potential of the country, of the community. Now, community tourism is not like another form of a tourism. It's really a strategy that communities can use to bring people into their community. So you set up your community tourism organization, have it registered, everything, and then you develop your own natural resources. So, for instance, Marigot has things like Marigot is natural for agriculture, so you can assist people to set up farm tours. We have a few heritage, a lot of our heritage has been, lost, but we
Mm-hmm.
still have places that have some people still have what you call the farine pan. When I was growing up, there was a big pot, iron pot in some people had it and would make our farine in that. In fact, at planning there was a big pot at the side. People in Margaret actually had that. There were one or two wheels, hydro wheels that were used to make hydroelectric power. There was one at Pig One, another one in a section of Margaret. So what it means is that the people in the community come together, they form this organization, and that organization has to be apolitical. No politics in it. When I formed that organization, there were people who were labor, freedom, whatever. The important thing about that organization is that people have to be like-minded. You have to understand the importance of that organization. It's all about building the capacity of the members to do their own business.
Mm-hmm.
So they join the organization because they have a business in mind, and they know that if they're in this organization, it can be achieved. So, for instance, there's one of the persons in the organization. He's interested. He was he grew CMOS, and he grew up in a CMOS growing environment. So he wanted to do his CMOS manufacturing there, and he got some assistance through that, through the organization to expand, to move it on. There's another girl, she has a seasoning called Earth Seasoning. When she came in, she was doing she was dry her peppers, sweet peppers, and just use it in some kind of she didn't have really top class packaging. And one of the things I was able to do, because the organization was well established, it has its account, and it has it's how you call it, certification as a business. I was able to apply for free. I was able to apply for grant funding from different agencies. These are some basic things you must have. It must be the organization must be registered, must have its own account, and through that you can start applying for grant funding. So we were able to get grant funding to train people in marketing, packaging, product development, and all these sort of things. Then the other thing is that you can have the White Kubulu trails. There are two segments in the Heights of Marigot. One starts at Pigwa, goes to the Heights of Marigot. The other one, segment 8, moves from Marigot to Salisbury. So, and then we have our cocoa culture and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the whole aim is to package everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can have a community tourism day.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's Ireland, you can have a community tourism festival in Dominica,
Mm-hmm.
and people and so the whole aim, as I told you, of community tourism is to bring in visitors to your community. So let's say we organize a community tourism festival for Dominica. You will advertise all the different activities in all the different communities. And people just move from community to
Mm-hmm.
community and enjoy it. Whether it's diasporans or, if you advertise it widely enough, then tourists will also come. So you see right
Right.
away you bring in. Then the whole
Absolutely.
another aspect of it is for people to have like Airbnbs. You call them Airbnb because everybody understand what it means. Have develop a small accommodation, maybe just change a room into like a apartment, and then the people who come will rent from these people. So a lot of the money remains in the community. So that is in a nutshell is
Sure.
tourism and culture. But remember, I said formation of the committee is important. Apolitical. Nobody talk about politics, and
Mm-hmm.
it should come from the community up, not like in certain cases community tourism groups are formed in other communities. But these fizzled away because it was the government deciding it should be on that and this other.
Right.
Nothing like that. People
Mm-hmm.
who have an interest and want to develop their business ideas to sell to visitors, they
Right.
join. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And one other one, because we're running out of time, and I want Julie to chime in. One other
Okay.
one
Let me see
quickly.
which other one I should do. Well, just as was said, well, youth and education I could talk about,
Yeah, that's
but the
important.
same
Good.
thing, environment and climate resilience.
Mm-hmm.
You do the same thing. So, community tourism is more about culture and your natural resources, but you take care of your environment also. So things like garbage disposal on
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
roadside, that should be a no-no. You organize recycling or some form of activity for that. Taking care of your natural resources. You have a river. That's why I'm so against what they are doing to Pigwa River. Pigwa River is such a beautiful river running through a community. So much can be done here. Take care of your environment. Ensure that you don't build where you build is safe. So it will take some form of mapping and so that sort of thing because people have been affected by building too close to rivers and so on. So yeah, the same thing that apply to climate
Mm-hmm.
resilience at a national level
Right.
also applies at a community level.
Yes, so let's jump. Thank you so much, Annie, for that.
Yeah.
Let's jump over to Juliet because the idea is to take this as a template and implement it in every community. So just two and what they would look like in your community of Roseau, Juliet. And then, guys, I want to take some of the comments from the folks that I haven't heard from on Facebook. So I'm coming to you guys. Yes, Juliet.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I've already explored the potential for tourism and culture
Yes.
in Roseau,
Yes.
and that would be. I mean, there's something to be said on each of the six, so it's a very good template to work from. But I'll just talk about youth and education.
Yeah.
In Roseau, we have our young people. We know that sports is an outlet for young people, right? It's more than an outlet. It helps with their own development. Um, we have been denied Windsor Park, a proper playground for the last 26 years plus. Since the stadium has been up and running, the young people of Roseau don't really have a playground that they can go to. So that is something that I'd really like to see materialize because sports is important. A combination of maybe behind the grammar school, there's space along the road, that circular road around the stadium, and also do something for sports in the botanical gardens itself. And when it comes to education, I would just like to see our education system be a little more holistic in its approach, where the young people, instead of going to school to pass an exam, you go to school so that you can improve, do more environmental education, you can improve your financial literacy, like just make it when the kids graduate from that system, it will be so much easier to find a job or to create a job for themselves or for others. So you can train them in entrepreneurial skills. I would just like to see our education system much more robust than it is right now, and that we push sports as a main area for personal development.
Yeah, and what a wealth of information. Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you so much, Julie, for the city. I think that is what you're being called now. So thank you so much for the wealth of information. And here's my call to action, because we have quite a few intellectuals on this Facebook Live and listening to us. And my call to action, because we know that Roots Connections is much more than just a radio program. It is a call to action. So my call to action to everyone who's listening is to join us on this mission, right? Because I think this is a very important mission that you have started, Annie. And whatever community you're from, I would like for you to reach out to me, pushpast10@gmail.com, pushpast10@gmail.com. And many people have my phone number, so you can WhatsApp me as well and be a part of this mission. So I want you to express your interest in coming on Roots Connections and telling us how this template could be implemented in your community and what are the next steps you're willing to take, because this is an action program. This is not a program where we come and we talk and then we go back and we do our laundry, we watch TV and say, oh, that was a nice program, right? No, this is not what we want from this program. The same way Annie is implementing this in her community, the same way Juliette has plans for using a similar approach in her community. I want you who's listening on Q95 Radio and everybody who's on the Facebook and the YouTube Live to email me again, pushpast10, pushpast10 and tell me that you're interested in implementing this in your community. And so we can get the engine of change going, because 26 years later, we're still waiting, and we're still waiting, and we all know that the agenda is not for the ordinary man. Okay, let's just be honest. So let me take a couple of quick comments from folks we have not yet read from, because we want to be so grateful that you're here. Washburn Coffee, nice to see you. Good stuff, ladies. Very educational, wonderful. Dave Bertrand, we need a multi-story car park just out of Roseau, and we can develop a hub system. So all the names I'm calling, you know yourself, we need you to join in. Margot LaRock, Roseau. Okay, Greg Baptist, where are you, Greg? You tell us what community you represent. But Benahin, Orville, so where's the money for Roseau Enhancement Project? Good question, Orville. And this person continues, when you win Roseau enough, please find out who's the owner of the building next to NCCU. Julie, that's for you. Great practice. They need to bring back the fountain on the bayfront. It was very welcoming and attractive. Let's scroll down. Washburn, priority should be given to decentralization of critical public services and development initiatives, encourage regional development and northeast and south of the island. So some wonderful insight, Greg. People have to come to Roseau for every little thing. The next government should decentralize some of the government institutions. And a man who needs no introduction, we know him very well, Angelo Allen. Nice to see you. Wonderful to have you on the program. He says a wonderful evening to all the lovely ladies on this informative program. So guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your call to action. We have so much work to do, but in the same way that Annie is doing it in her community, if we all jump in and not just wait for, what is that day? Community Day of Service? We're going to need more than Community Day of Service to move our island and our people forward. So ladies, your final thoughts. And again, I want to just thank you so much. I hope this is not the last time we will engage with you on this very important topic. We have so much more to discuss, but I want to thank you for disseminating all the great information that you did today. So, your final thoughts as we wind down. Annie, we will start with you.
Um, my final thought or my final advice to Dominican is that we should not take, like for instance, right now we hear that CBI is dead, and some people think, okay, CBI is dead, Dominica is dead. Now is the time for Dominica to really rise again, and we can do that by just taking the bull by the horn and doing what has to be done. Like tonight, between me and Juliette, we put out so many plans and strategies. All is not lost for Dominica. Dominica is a land full with potential that we have not explored. And we can do it, it can be done at different levels. I am all for getting it moving at the community level, and where people take back power into their hands, form your communities, form your groups, form your action plans. We have the Marigold Community Tourism is can can hold symposium because they have, yes, the people inside, they have so much experience. Most of the people who started at the beginning are still here, you know and yeah, and we can now turn Dominica into a climate resilient nature isle. Not sorry, a sustainable nature isle. It's one thing to talk about nature island, but we have to put, not just talk the talk. We have to walk the walk, get strategies in place to get it moving in all the different ways that were discussed tonight. I cannot repeat them. So all is not lost. CBI is gone, but Dominica has the potential. We have been basically blocked from going to the EU, to the America, to the USA, and all these countries. But what we could do is develop our country, go back to what, focus on what we have as a nation. We have nature, we have culture, we have history, we have music, we have all sorts of things. Develop it, package it at a high standard, and then let the visitors come to look at it. Let them come. We cannot go to your country, but you can come to see what we have. And that's it. That's how we should do it, and that's how we're going to make money anyway. So that's my call to action coming up from.
Yep, excellent. Thank you so much, Annie. Julie, over to you.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to share with you and others that are calling in and interacting with this program. When we think about sustainable development for Dominica, beyond the CBI program, I think what's important is that we look within. What do we have that we can capitalize on? We have agriculture, we have water, we have good soil, we have water, we have the potential fishing industry that can be much bigger than it is. We have manufacturing. There's so much that we have right here that has potential that we have not exploited. And that's what I want to, in terms of to focus on. That's a change I think we need in Dominica. And I want to tell people out there that you have to, everybody has to get involved. We all have our role to play. Some of us choose to be on the front line, but we need those behind us to effect that change that we need. So everybody has a role to play. Get up tomorrow morning and decide, what can I do to help my country get on track? I think that's a question that we should ask ourselves when we wake up in the morning.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that is the question we always leave our audience with. What role can you play? What role can you play beyond listening to this program, beyond sharing this program? And Wilworth, yes, you're part of the people I am thinking of for that panel. Angelo Allen, Greg Baptist, Alvin Thomas. I'm calling everybody out. Net Packet, everybody else. What community can you represent as we look into taking this template across Dominica? Right? We need a catchy title for this mission, but I think it is doable, and most importantly, providing hope for our young people. Because as a person who left Dominica on a scholarship to come to the US with a US visa, I can only imagine how detrimental when I look at all the
Yeah.
young people graduating from high school, graduating from the state college, and thinking how much more limited their opportunities are now. And so, Annie, you said it perfectly well. Now is the time to turn the camera lens towards home. Now is the time to turn the camera lens towards our own development, because we're seeing that the doors are closing in the international world. And so we have to look within Dominica, within the region, to for our own sustainable economic development. So Wilbur says Dominica has some of the most brilliant people. We have the potential to transform Dominica. We just need to build it and act on it. And so I am waiting for the emails. I am waiting for the WhatsApp messages for everyone who's interested in joining this important panel and taking the discussion beyond the radio, beyond Facebook and YouTube, into a call to action on the ground. So as always, we are grateful to you, our listeners of Q95 FM radio, those who join us on Facebook and YouTube. And we had such an engaging and interactive session this evening. Thank you again, Annie and Julie. And Julie, best of luck with the
Julie for the city.
Hello, Julie for the city. Best of luck with the political correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lambi, thank you for being here. And everyone who tried to call and you were not able to do so, remember you can WhatsApp me if you would like to make a contribution to the program. And so we want to thank everyone who's been on this journey with us as we continue to seek opportunities for the sustainable development of Dominica. And I will repeat the question: what role can you play in this important mission? So until then, it has been great to be here with you for another episode of Roots Connections on Q. I've been your host, Dr. Simone Mathieu, and we are going to continue. We're going to continue on this journey of the sustainable economic and other development of our country. Make sure you join us for our next program. I believe it is going to be July 22nd, because we have Dr. Chester Wilkins, who is a genius in the music industry, international genius in the music industry, and he has agreed to join us to share his expertise as we look for hope for our young people in securing their future in the music industry. So ladies, thank you for being here. You can say bye to the audience. Hopefully we can do it again. And thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Let me thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Roots Connections on Q, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. every other Wednesday on Q95, the big station. Dominicans journeyed beyond our shores for decades in search of economic opportunities and educational advancement. Many are ready to give